Okay. So good evening, everyone. I know we're a couple of minutes later than we would like to be. My name is Omar Passons. I'm with the City of San Jose, Deputy City Manager for Homelessness. This is a Via del Oro project status update community meeting. Um, just so that everyone knows, we're recording the meeting so that all of the members of the public who might not be able to join due to time constraints or what have you will be able to access. I'll ask one of our team to put the link in the chat. There's a website that actually has a fair amount of information, including the last Via del Oro project update meeting, in case somebody wants to go back and watch that one as well. We're going to get started in just a moment because it's 5:33 and we only have 90 minutes. I just want to first make an announcement generally. So we have two interpreters, and so what I'm going to ask now is that first the Spanish and then the Mandarin interpreter just make an announcement about how to access that channel. It's a fundamentally important part of the way the city of San Jose does business, to try to make sure that meetings of these type are as accessible to as many people as possible, including in the language that they are most comfortable. So we try to do that with as many of our meetings as possible. So with that, I'd like to ask first first the Spanish and then the Mandarin interpreter to just explain what people will need to do. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Hey, buenas tardes. Esta junta cuenta con interpretación simultánea. Si quieres escuchar la junta simultáneamente en español, en el fondo de su pantalla va a escoger lenguaje o va a buscar el icono de mundo y va a escoger lenguaje y español. Si está usando un iPad o un celular, busca el menú de 3 puntitos y ahí va a escoger el idioma y español. Terminando el anuncio, se va a activar los canales.
各位朋友晚安，欢迎你参加今天 San Jose 的 Via Oral Side 更新会议。那今天晚上这个会议呢，马上就要开始了，谢谢你们来参加。那我们呢，待会会有西班牙语还有中文的频道。如果你们想要听中文翻译的话，麻烦你们选中文频道，我会为你们翻译。谢谢。
Suda, do I need to wait a moment for the rooms to open up? Okay. So while we wait, I will say just maybe one housekeeping point, which is we're going to go to we're joined by our mayor, Matt Mahan. First, he's going to say a few remarks to contextualize, and then he will hand it over to Councilmember Batra, who represents Council District 10, where this proposed location is. And after Councilmember Batra, we will have a few words from the CEO of Dignity Moves, so one of our key partners in this effort, Elizabeth Funk. And then I will do, I and Jim Ortball, lead for special projects in the city manager's office, will, just like last time, although shorter and new information, we will do a brief update, and then most of the time together will be spent answering questions to the best of our ability. As is the case every time we have one of these community meetings, there may be questions that we can't answer yet. For example, we don't yet have a provider to actually deliver the services on site, so several of the sort of specific questions will need to be deferred. But so that's the general flow. I will just say two things. One, look, these are difficult conversations sometimes. We have folks who have a variety of perspectives. Wherever you land on this topic, I just ask that you be respectful of your neighbors. When you ask a question, try to do your best to be brief, to ask the question itself. We'll try to avoid making disparaging comments directed at people. People have, I think one of the things I've really enjoyed since I came to San Jose is how willing members of the community are to have reasonable dialogue, even with differing views. It's a hot and heat conversation, and sometimes that happens, but it's good to be respectful of one another. And then the last thing is of course we will take questions until 7:30, and then we'll wrap, and it'll get posted in the next couple of days. And so with that, I'd like to turn first to Mayor Matt Mahan to say a few words. Mayor.
Great. Thanks, Omar. Good evening, everyone. Great to be here with you all. I hope you're doing well. Appreciate the intro from Omar. I'm going to just give a little bit of an overview. I want to start with a few thank yous. I want to thank Omar Passons, Jim Ortball, Dignity Moves, John Sobrato, our housing department, active neighborhood leaders who are here, everybody who's gotten us to this point. This model that we're pursuing with Dignity Moves is innovative. Because of the private land being contributed, it is a public-private partnership that allows us to accelerate timelines for building basic dignified shelter, scale our approach more cost-effectively, and continue to make progress in ending the unmanaged, unsheltered homelessness crisis that our city is facing. And look, the one thing I think we probably all agree on, whether or not you support this particular project, is that the status quo situation around homelessness in our community is unsustainable. We have got to have places for people to go, and when they're available, we need to hold people accountable for using them. My fundamental view on this is that while there are many causes of homelessness and many things people need to get out of homelessness, the linchpin in our approach is to create safe, managed places for people to be, require that they use them, and reclaim our public space. We will save avoid a lot of human suffering, save a lot of taxpayer dollars and environmental destruction by getting people into these places. And we've seen them work incredibly successfully, whether it's interim housing, safe parking, converted motels and hotels, permanent housing. We find that when we offer people places to go, especially when there are on-site services, they remain, for the most part, the vast majority of people remain in those safe managed places. People remain housed, even if they're dealing with serious challenges in their lives. And that's better for everybody. Less suffering for them, less service impacts for all of us, and less of our taxpayer dollars going to just chasing people around. So we need sustainable solutions here. When this project comes back to council, I want to follow up on our last community meeting. I am working with the council member. We'll be working with other colleagues to bring forward a memo that will follow up on some of the things we discussed last time. So this is a local preference for outreach. Everything's up to council deliberation and debate and negotiation, but here's where we're starting. Within a 1.5 mile radius, there should be a local preference where we should be doing outreach to people who are currently encamped within 1.5 miles of this site. They should be given preference for outreach and placement in this site because the neighborhood has to benefit for taking on a solution to homelessness. We also plan, after that outreach process is complete, to then do abatements. And we have used this formula before. We do outreach, we offer housing, we offer services, we give people options, and then we clear encampments, even if there are some folks who have refused services. There has to be some accountability, some follow through here, and we need to encourage folks to take advantage after repeated outreach of shelter and services. And then we're proposing a re-encampment ban, basically a no re-encampment zone within 2 blocks of every EIH, every safe parking site, all of these temporary transitional sites that we've stood up. And we've stood up many, and not just in District 2 and 10, but in 3 and 5 and 4 and 6 and all over in much of the city. And we have more in the pipeline. We have one coming online in District 9 next year. So we're really looking far and wide, but we owe it to the people being served in the community as well as the surrounding neighborhood to ensure that these do not become magnets. And just as a reminder, we do not allow walk-ups. There's no service provision at an interim site. You can't just walk up and stand in line or get access because you need help. You have to go through a referral from the housing department. So that's critically important that we ensure that the neighborhood benefits. The folks who are currently encamped there get first access to the site. The major encampments within that 1.5 mile radius are abated, and there's no re-encampment within a manageable zone around the site. That's the principle from my perspective, and I think the council members, in terms of getting community buy-in and doing something that is scalable and repeatable across what will ultimately be a dozen or more sites. because we want these solutions to be spread out and to be equitably distributed, and they need to work. And people need to be able to drive by them and see they're clean, they're well-maintained, they're working. A couple other notes. This site, Via del Oro, the construction contracts come back to council on April 16th. So that's in about 2 weeks. The final budget vote, which would fund some of the work I just described, comes to the council in mid-June. So we're in the middle of our budget process, a lot of discussion, debate over the coming weeks. Mid-June will be the budget vote, and then our new fiscal year starts July 1. I think that it's important that we stand up these sites and that we have that accountability for using them. Otherwise, I know the community often calls for abatement, but what we end up seeing is what you've all experienced with RVs. Look at Realm and Las Colinas. We simply keep shifting people back and forth, the same RVs between the same 2 streets in your neighborhood. And it's not actually doing anything. So the formula has to be find safe and managed places, on-site security, where there are some rules, there are some services, and then give people the option and ultimately hold them accountable for taking advantage of those places. And we're all going to win if we can do that. And to the best of our ability, we're going to try to spread those out as much as we can across San Jose and encourage our state and county leaders to spread those solutions out across the county and the state, because we need everybody to be part of the solution. Let's see here. I think I hit my major talking points. I'll turn it at this point. So I appreciate you all being here and being part of the community engagement process throughout. I think this is probably my 3rd or 4th meeting on this. Omar and Councilmember Bottcher have probably been to 10 meetings at this point, but appreciate you guys staying engaged. Let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Let's keep incrementally moving to bring down the number of people living in these horrific conditions, in unmanaged, unsheltered conditions with no sanitation, no security, no stability, no services. And let's keep marching forward to end this era of encampments that have been terrible for everybody, first and foremost, those who are stuck out there on our streets. So let me, Omar, I think I'm handing it to the council member. Is that right? Okay.
That's right. That's right. Thank
Councilmember
you.
Bottcher, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for that intro. And Omar, for giving me the chance to address our district and community. Thank you very much for the community members to be attending this meeting. This is a precious time with your family and you're spending here with us because it is a very important update concerning you and concerning your neighbors. So thanks a lot for being here. This project, as Mayor said, is both extremely important for addressing the homelessness problem, which we all have together faced. Because it is such an important path, because we described to you that this is the first time we are using a private property or will be using the private property to build interim housing. We have used the city property, agency property, which has different kind of challenges, but this can, when successful, it can open the doors to more properties available from the philanthropists and other people who have real estate, which is lying around and could help us at the moment, and they don't need to use that property. So making this project extremely successful is going to help us address the problem which we are facing by having 4,600 or so number of people who are in the encampments. Now, encampments, unmanaged encampments, are not only bad for the people who are living there, they're also extremely bad for the people around them. So when we have removed the encampments in the past, as Mayor described, we moved people from one side to the other. You can call it a whack-a-mole game we played. Okay, so these people go from one place to the other, then they come back there, and hence the encampment abatement really did not give us any benefit. Okay, so the only way we can get any benefit for the community is by moving these people where they're going to be well taken care of, and they're going to be on the path to self-sufficiency, because we are not going to be able to support them forever in these so-called interim housing. Somehow these people fell off the track and lost a job, domestic violence, or whatever the reasons might be. We have to give them a place and the tools to be able to rebuild their life and have a self-sufficient environment, which means they go and hire a place or rent a place just like we all live. Okay, so goal is to get them in that process in 6 to 9 months, whatever typically it is taking for people to move from the interim housing to the permanent housing. So one of the concepts which has been accepted in this budget is the mayor has called it preserving the progress, which is when we remove encampment, we clean up that area by moving these people, and I don't use the word abatement, but okay, we move these people into the housing, whether they are shelter of any kind, we want to call it, where they have the tools to rebuild their place. Once we have removed those encampments, we want to be able to keep that area free of encampments. And that is a step-by-step progress, hopefully by building more EIH shelters or permanent affordable homes, whatever that is. Each time we build this, we clean up a certain area from encampment. And by moving this way, step by step, someday we should be able to call, we have no encampments in San Jose. I'm looking forward to that day. The second concept which has been accepted and needed, people have felt that homelessness, when it comes or homeless people come, the city has abandoned all rules, ordinances, there's no enforcement of any kind. City has not abandoned, will not abandon the rules which are applicable. People have to cooperate. Just because they're homeless does not give them a certificate to operate in any manner. They have to live with us, they have to cooperate with us, and they have to be part of the society. So the rules will be enforced, but we have to give them the opportunity to be able to get those things done. Mayor described to you that we will be writing a memo and asking for the things which we had promised we will be trying to get for this as we build this EIH. When this is built, we want to have that memo, the rules applied, which is he described to you, local preference, no return, and those things. Okay, so that's where our goal is. That's where I think you want. This is what you have told us in the past, and that is what we intend to deliver. Okay, you're going to get a lot of details about the inside of what the EIHs are going to look like on this site. I think you're going to be proud of what you see inside any of the sites you go to, but this one in particular, because of the way this thing has been planned and structured, you will be extremely proud. You'll like to take visitors there, but we will not be able to do for privacy reasons once they are occupied. Okay, but I would like you to visit those before they get opened or when they're ready to be opened. And I expect that we'll all in District 10 will be cooperating and making this project extremely successful, and it will be pride of the D10, which will become a role model, exemplary model for other locations to be operating and solving our homelessness problem. Thank you, Omar, and you can take your...
Thank you, Councilmember Batra. Just to recap for the folks who have joined, my name is Omar Passons. I'm the Deputy City Manager for Homelessness for the City of San Jose. We've heard from Mayor Mahan, Councilmember Batra. We're about to hear from the CEO of Dignity Moves, a philanthropic partner who has, frankly, done a really substantial lift in bringing this forward together with the John Sobrano Foundation. And then we'll go over a short presentation to give a project status update, myself and Jim Orpal, before the bulk of the next hour, which will be your question. So I'm just going to turn it over briefly to Elizabeth. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Omar. I'm thrilled to be here. The city of San Jose is really to be commended for the amazing work and progress that they have made that you all have made towards ending unsheltered homelessness. Dignity Moves is a nonprofit that is specifically about unsheltered homelessness, understanding that that's only one part of a very complex problem that is why people are ending on the streets. But unsheltered homelessness is the most visible, the most inhumane, and the most solvable. And San Jose is really taking that seriously. And you know, this problem affects us all. It affects us not just from the humanity and the dignity for those individuals, but it affects our economy, and the cost of dealing with unsheltered homelessness is twice what it costs for people to be taken care of indoors. So it's fiscally responsible, the environmental impacts, and all of the rest. This affects us all. So solving this problem is all hands on deck. I'm so proud to see this public-private partnership come together, where we've got corporations and individuals all contributing, because if we're going to really end this problem, it's going to need us all. But I think we need to start with ending this problem and work backwards, because I think the biggest thing that's happened is people have given up. They just think this problem isn't solvable. And when Mayor Mahan starts to identify districts where everyone is offered a dignified option, and then they're held accountable to take it, we're going to start seeing visibly that this problem does get ended. And there is a place where we do have enough interim housing for everyone if it's cost effective and can be done at scale. Some people call that criminalizing homelessness and say that that's cruel. I think what's cruel is leaving people without options. And when the city has enough options for people that are dignified and that they want to take, they will accept it. It is a myth that people don't want housing. They don't want the housing they've been offered. And in our experience, Dignity Moves is now done, has got 12 of these projects underway. Nobody turns it down when they have their own private room. And then they can come indoors and have the supportive services that have a much higher probability of getting them back onto their feet, and potentially even taxpayers again. So I'm very, very proud to be a part of this. We have raised money from the local stakeholders, and I hope this is the first of many. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, very much for that. I am going to attempt now to make this tech work. So I'm just going to share my screen with everyone so that we can then go on to a short presentation. As soon as we have, we need to sort of enable the sharing. So we'll just hang tight for a quick 1 second while that happens.
That's a Thursday, 2 weeks.
Okay. I will just give it one more second. Let's see. Sorry, Sudha, or I don't know who the host may be, but if you could enable the sharing feature, that would be great. I can. All right, just give us one quick second. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. As I said, we're going to go just for a brief. Go ahead, Sudha.
Trying now, Omar.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to share the screen from the beginning. Maybe. There we go. Oh, come now. Okay. Sudha, are you seeing the opening slide? Okay, thanks. Okay, so thanks, everybody. As I said, we're going to move, I would say, at a decent pace through this, because we do want to leave as much time as we can for your questions. The sort of goal tonight, a little quick background, shorter than normal. We have more background on the website link that we'll make available, but we'll just talk a little bit just to contextualize the issue. Then we'll just jump right into the point, which is really this construction project update. Where are we? What has happened since the last time we came to the community? Jim Ortbal will help us walk through that. Explain a little bit about the sort of cost-benefit analysis and what some of the changes have done to I think in some ways improve that dynamic. And then there, as you heard from both Councilmember Batra and Mayor Mahan, there have been there's a couple of different council directions. One from last October that was a direction to explore no encampment zones, and then a message in the mayor's March budget message. So I'll take a little bit of time and explain what all that means, and then we'll break and hear Q&A from the community. So you heard Councilmember Batra describe. So unfortunately, we as most regions, they send a bunch of people out to volunteer to count people. Sometimes every year. In Santa Clara County, it's every other year. So this 2023 data is from basically January of last year, and it takes a single snapshot. This is, you can see quite a high number of folks, unfortunately, on that night, a couple of nights who were living, who were experiencing homelessness regardless, if you don't have a permanent residence of your own, in whatever manner you're homeless. But you can see to the mayor's point, to Elizabeth Funk's point, a high number of folks who are living in tents or RVs or vehicles or frankly in structures on the street. That unsheltered homelessness is really difficult for our community, obviously, especially the members of our community that are living in those circumstances. This is the one slide that I will just tie is we have a regional framework, this community plan that includes, folks often will ask, hey, are we doing anything around prevention, or are we doing anything to try to address the underlying causes? And the answer is well, there's two answers. Yes, and we always need to do more, right? Like there's nobody who works for the city that's going to break their elbow, patting themselves on the back, given the circumstances that we're in. We have a lot of work to do, and we need to be honest and urgent about that work. So this is just meant to say that we do work with the County of Santa Clara, Destination Home, and other partners on these three strategies, right? That this plan that coalesces our work. And then our council voted earlier this year on an implementation plan that included things like end suffering on the street, right? Share and protect our public spaces. Share them and protect them, right? Expect cleanliness of each other, right? Whether you are a business owner who's got construction waste, or you're somebody who's living outside, if you are able, we want everybody to respect the community that we share together. And then create opportunity. That was our implementation plan. So there'll be more about that in the future, but this background just sets up, and now I'll turn it over to Jim Ortball. And Jim, you just let me know, say next slide, and I'll advance for you to really walk us through the actual project update. Jim?
Great. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Omar. I think that's still your slide.
Yeah, and I think the long and short of it, I think for those that have not joined before, these are a couple of examples of interim housing projects, sites, communities around San Jose. Our pipeline continues to increase. We have added some additional beds, and as I mentioned, it aligns with the community plan. As the mayor said earlier, we are finding that when we open these sites, people use them. They make progress towards a permanent solution, and they remain off the street in any case at very high numbers. And do you want to take the location slide, or do you want me?
Yeah, no, I got that one. So bring it the next slide, maybe, because I don't see the map showing up in this. There we go. Yeah. So good evening, everybody. I'm Jim Ortball from the city manager's office. In our last community meeting on this project, we were at a concept stage, but this part of it is kind of reminding everybody of the basics of the project. It's at the Villa del Oro site. It's in Council District 10 at the southeast corner of Villa del Oro and San Ignacio Avenue. The site is about 2 3/4 acres. Our intent is to use about 2 acres of that site. The owner is John Sobrato, and through his family foundation, he is offering to lease the property to the city for 10 years at $1 per year. Mayor Mahan, Councilor Batra talked about kind of testing this approach, utilizing private property that hasn't been developed or isn't being used as a way to address the shortage of sites. So this is the site, and the Sobrato Foundation is leasing it to the city for a 10-year period at $1 per year. Moving on to the next slide. So this gives a sense of who is involved in the project. As was mentioned, it's a public-private partnership. I've talked about the land piece of it. The other major element of this is the partners who are doing the development, the design, and the construction. Dignity Moves has been the overall developer and organizer of the project for the city in partnership with the city, but they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting around bringing on high quality architects and construction companies and Gensler Architects and Swinnerton Construction. When we took the item to council in the fall, we got direction to do the final design of the project and to do the detailed cost estimate and to update it from where we're at in the fall. So we have done that. These 3 companies or nonprofit and then private companies have prior experience in doing these projects. In particular, they've done one in San Francisco and Santa Barbara. And Elizabeth mentioned some a dozen other projects throughout the state of California in the Bay Area community. So a lot of very solid experience in terms of design and delivery of these types of projects. Critically important and a great appreciation by the city are the philanthropic donations and discounts. Dignity Moves took the major lead on in terms of getting philanthropic donations, literally cash donations to go towards purchasing sleeping units, furniture, paying design fees and project management fees. And then also the other companies, Gensler and Swinnerton in particular, taking reduced project management and design fees. All totaled, it will approach $4 million in reduced costs to the city, which makes it a very competitive project from a cost standpoint and an overall value to the city. I'll get into a little bit more detail in a moment on that one. Go to the next slide, Omar. And I just want to describe, where we got to in terms of the final design of the project, how the community will be laid out. I mentioned earlier, it's about a 2 3/4 acre site. You can see we're utilizing about 2 acres on the eastern side of the property. We have capacity for up to about 75 sleeping units. They have the ability to house 2 people in those units. Typically, they have their own units. Most of them are duplex type units and with about 150 beds. So we can shelter and house up to 150 people. So a pretty good number of people that we can help get off the streets. The approach in this community is that we're going to have shared use kind of private individual bathroom shower units. You can see them kind of down the middle of the community, kind of where the Hammerhead T areas, that is the area that has the middle, has the bathroom shower type units. We will have up at the northern, the top end of the community is where we have our kitchen, food preparation area. We will have case management as people come into the community. The first thing we do is aim to stabilize and address some of the challenges they've had while being on the streets, and then start the process of working with them to find permanent housing, to stabilize their life, to help them work on any behavioral or medical challenges they have. Work can be done related to employment and self-sufficiency, as Councilmember Batra talked about. So this community will have a full set of services and facilities for people to really work on graduating, moving up to a more stable, permanent environment. It will have all of the utilities that any other, residential community would have in the city, in terms of it will be on, the sanitary sewer system, storm treatment. It'll have electrical service, appropriate fire suppression, all the things that ensure that we protect the environment, trash collection, everything so that it does not have an impact on the surrounding community. So we feel good about this design, feel proud about where we've gotten to at this point in time. And then the last one, no, that's fine. No, I'm ready to go to that last one. Next slide, please, Omar. Yeah. No, sorry. So we did do a cost benefit analysis in our last meeting. We've updated that. This one identifies kind of the major cost categories, if you will, what goes into that, where we kind of ended up, and then the major benefits as well. The costs of the project are the organization, which Dignity Moves in the city are taking the lead on. Gensler Architect has done the design. Swinnerton will be doing the construction, which is the bulk of the cost of the project. The city will be permitting it. So we will review formal design plans that have been submitted by the architects and the engineers. We will approve those plans, and it will be built to those plans, and the city will inspect it to those plans. We do have a contingency so that we can absolutely get the project done for the amount that we're agreeing to with Dignity Moves and their partners. Originally, we had a need to look at demobilization relocation at the end of the 5-year period. Mr. Sobrato and his family foundation came back to the city and Dignity Moves and said, I appreciate what we're doing here. The investment is important by the city, Dignity, and all the partners. I'd be prepared to offer a 10-year lease to try and defer that future demobilization relocation out to get more use and benefit out of the site and out of what we're investing. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So that is being offered by Mr. Sobrato. And then from a cost per bed, kind of the real comparative benchmark we have, we're looking at about $89,000 a bed to develop this particular project. And right now, that is one of the lowest cost per bed of all of our current projects, and it's very competitive with past projects as well. So we think it makes a lot of sense. The major benefits, this is a pretty fast design build. The designers, the engineers, the architects, the city digging, we're all in the same room, accelerating design. If this is approved by council on April 16th, we will be mobilizing in the end of the month, purchasing long lead time, and aiming to have the project complete by the end of 2024, or at the latest in early 2025, and being able to shelter and house up to 150 people and have them be off the streets and in a much more dignified environment. I've talked about the experienced philanthropic team with literally cash donations approaching $3 million that Dignity Moves, Mayor Mahan, and others worked hard to secure, and then an additional $1 million in fee discounts, so about $4 million off the cost of what it would normally take the city. Talked about the lease, and then the bottom line, providing that interim housing for up to 150 people. So Omar, I'm done. You can take it over from here.
Thanks, Jim. Now, one of the other things that we said we'd talk about today is these two council directions, or excuse me, one is a council direction the council voted back on October 17th, and the other came out of the mayor's March budget message. There's a lot of text on these slides. The reason sometimes we have text-heavy slides is because we're going to put the slides on the actual website so people can download and read them. So we want to make sure that it's enough information that you know what the materials are. So back in October, the mayor, Councilmember Batra, the council as a whole voted to do several things, direct the exploration of several things, prioritizing where outreach would occur as it related to the site, collect and share data on before and after, so that before the site opens, we have a sense of what's happening, and after the site is open and running, what does it actually look like in terms of the support to the community that's in the interim housing and the support to the community that is around the interim housing, right? Again, evaluating the conditions and developing a plan for relocating residents and figuring out how to enforce continue to enforce the sort of good neighbor policy, which is a policy that the city's Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services Department created, working with members of the unhoused community around, hey, we really want to try to get to a place that has a manageable space for people. That's enough for a person to manage their affairs. And so it's 12 by 12 feet is our good neighbor policy. And then also to evaluate providing enhanced blight services. And then, so that was a baseline. And I have a couple quick slides on that. We've got about 3 minutes left, and then we're going to turn to questions and answers. I will say about the March budget message, and that's another item that there will be a link for, so that you can find that. It was adopted unanimously by the council, and it said, as you can see, explore the allocation of combination of new and existing resources. And it references that point the mayor made earlier, within 2 walkable blocks of every existing and planned EIH, safe parking, and safe sleeping site. I think it's important to recognize that we need a spectrum of options so that people have a place to be while they're looking for that first interim location, right? Because it can be really challenging. Not everywhere that somebody ends up sleeping for a night is the best place in our city for them to sleep for the night. So we're really trying to be thoughtful across that spectrum. And then the other part of the March budget message, and as it regards to this topic, was to explore the establishment of no return zones where significant resources have been dedicated towards rehousing people. And so that's just another component that's important. And it includes a range of areas, right? And a range of conditions. But those are 2 pieces of policy direction that impact the way the city we as city staff sort of approach our work. So in both of these cases, we've been directed to come back. On the council direction on the top, October 17th, that will be part of the discussion at April 16th that you heard about earlier. And then the sort of response to the March budget message is the actual city manager's proposed budget, which comes out a little bit later this year in May. A couple more slides before we break. These are just some snapshots of conditions around the Via del Oro site. This is comparing February to September 2022, 23 to 23, 24. And you can kind of see there the differences one year to the next. I will point out at the very bottom, there's 3 little buffer references, and we haven't settled in on the language, but that's basically if you take a 1/4 mile around this location, a 1/2 mile, and a 1.5 mile, and they're color coded. So the 1/4 mile is green, the 1/2 mile is light blue, and the 1.5 mile buffer in this graph is sort of like a yellowish color. So it's just intended to give a sense of what's happening. For those that have joined only recently, we're just about done with the presentation portion. So we're just about a minute or two from switching, and we'll spend the last 45 minutes on questions and answers from the members of the public. And so then this is another question, sort of what's the sort of analysis or understanding of what the encampments look like in terms of how many around the site currently. So our Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services staff went out to these sites and actually they gather this data pretty regularly. And so you can see the sort of active encampments again on the left, a 1/4 mile from this site, 1/2 mile from the site, and 1.5 miles from the site. This doesn't it represents one encampment without specifying how many people or structures per encampment. So that can vary a little bit. And then just so you know, the encampment trash services also within that sort of buffer. Again, this is all intended to provide a sort of basic level of understanding about the council direction to explore no encampments and then come back to council with more information. Quick note on next steps and timeline. So I mentioned the return to council on April 16th of this year. If the project is approved in spring of this year, we expect the project to begin construction. And then in the winter, as Jim Ortball mentioned, either late this year or early next year, it's expected that we'll actually open the site and help people get off the street and get to a different opportunity. And then I will just say, as to the Community Advisory Committee point, and this is where we break, and I'm going to stop to share. Part of what all of the sites, and we have mentioned this in prior meetings as well, all of our EIH communities, there is typically our housing department and the council district office where the site is located will actually be in contact about identifying the folks at the council office may want to be engaged in that community advisory committee. And then at some point, a community advisory committee that's specific to the issues of the district is formed. Those things end up happening a variety of ways, depending. Different council offices kind of want to be engaged in slightly different ways. To the members of the public, I think engaging your council office, if you're interested, I think is a useful way to go. There will likely be more talk about this and about the status of the progress of establishing a community advisory committee. I will say to you that part of having that CAC is where some of those questions around what's going to happen with regard to storage in the actual carrying out of that site. What will the service provider do to connect people to housing or to hold them accountable, or what kind of mutual conduct rules may exist, or what are we doing to help people get back on their feet? All those questions are service provider level questions. And what we're really trying to do today is we wanted to come back to the community and say, here is the latest construction project update on the construction side before we got into the next session, and to confirm that because the council in October voted for the exploration of a no encampment zone, that we were in fact taking that to heart, and our teams are doing that analysis to bring it back on April 16th. And so what I'm going to do now is, I see I have one hand up. I'm going to do my best to ask for a little bit of patience as we potentially get more hands over the next bit of time. I will try to get to folks when we get to towards the end. If there are sort of closing comments from our any of our elected folks, or we'll take those. But we really want to give the public a chance to ask their questions. And I see that Isaac has his hand up first, so we'll start there. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, this is Isaac, Omar. Just want to let you know that we already created a CAC for Via Deloro. It was created on November 30th. And the chair of this committee is myself, Isaac. The vice chair is John Powers, and the secretary is Jackie. I just want to give you some basic information. Via Deloro EIH site. Sorry, one second. The Via Deloro EIH and the safe parking site are in close proximity to each other. They're probably less than half a mile from each other. The safe parking is currently at full capacity and have been running for a while now. Half of the RVs are from our local areas, which is a success so far. And because of the close proximity between the safe parking and Via Deloro sites, we have overlapping issues. So we have the blight issue, the graffiti, illegal dumping, encampments, RVs, and now the no encampment zones and no return policy. So it made sense for the Via Deloro CAC to also oversee the safe parking. And this is what's been happening for a while. And we have meetings with the city. We've been having it with Greg. I think Greg is here for a while now. So this is just an update, just to clarify one thing. Another thing, I just want to
Isaac. Yeah, Isaac, sorry to interrupt. I just so that you know, I tend to be a pretty sort of transparent guy, because the city on its sites always makes sure to work with the council office. I just will say that as a follow-up item to this meeting, I will be making sure that we have a specific conversation with Councilmember Batra and staff, and probably also the mayor's staff, just to make sure that we as a city government all have the same understanding. I hear what you're saying. I'm not disputing it. Obviously I wasn't there, but I'm just saying, as a matter of practice, it's part of our job is to make sure that we've had those internal conversations as well. So I just want to make sure that everybody in the room sort of has that knowledge base. But go ahead, ask your question.
I understand. We've been having meetings for regularly for months right now. So this is not new. But now going back, and Councilman Batra can speak on that. So the mayor and councilman touch on the most important aspects of the projects, which are for us, no encampment zone and no return policy. I just noticed in your presentation, you stated the buffer zone is 1.5 miles. We don't want to be stuck with that. And some encampment might be like 1.6 miles or 1.8 miles. So we don't want to be stuck with 1.5 miles at this time. So it's best not to keep it like a 1.5 number, because we've been talking to the community. So it could be 1.6 miles. We don't want to be stuck just with a 1.5. I just want to bring this to your attention. Another thing I want to talk about is we've been seeing some issues with the parking, safe parking. We have safe parking. They don't have enough parking spots, and they've been parking in nearby neighborhoods, and that's something the community doesn't like. So the city is working. Greg is working on it, and they're trying to find a solution for this. I remember a while back it was mentioned that Via Deloro EIH will have 65 parking lots. I know it's early right now, but I hope that you guys take into consideration and maybe bring it up to 85 or something like that. So I will stop at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Isaac, for those pieces of information. I think I will just mention we are in communication, I guess is the best way to say it, with the VTA about expanding our access at that site. I have been in direct contact with them. You may recall Mayor Mahan had a memo some months ago to try to remove the barriers that existed to actually getting people into the Santa Teresa site. Those are barriers that we as staff removed from the development of the next one at Berryessa, but the mayors and team sort of recognized that challenge and said, hey, can you direct staff to go work on it? We are having that exact conversation between the lawyers, and I mean, the stuff goes right, like you got to make sure the lawyers are comfortable and all this kind of thing, but we are trying to both remove the barriers that made it hard to let some folks in and then also expand the parking. So that's not a done deal yet. The conversations are ongoing, all those caveats. We hope to have another update by April 16th when we're actually at council on this. So thank you for that. I have been making notes of who's going in order. So just so everybody knows, I'm going to go first to Gail, then to Elvira, and then to John Powers. Gail?
Thank you so much. Quick question, twofold. First of all, you're going to do an RFP for the service provider, right?
So it's a little, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole on this one, Gail. What I'll say is the county did a sort of master set of proposals in the last 6 months. And what we're trying to do, just quick aside for everybody's awareness, there aren't that many service providers, like social service companies, that are actually able to do this work. And so anytime that we can make it so they don't have to do one whole thing for us and then a separate whole thing for the county, we try to be thoughtful there. Plus, it helps us have unified standards around what kind of service Omar is getting at location X versus what kind of service Jim is getting at location Y. So we are likely to leverage that process that they already did, but it's still to be determined. Gail, what's your second question?
Well, and then quickly, if everybody that gets in there has to have a VI SPDAT, right?
That's right. Or it may be the case that those are administered once they're in. I think that's an operational decision. I just honestly don't know at the moment. I'll double check.
So if the camp that I go to at Great Oaks, my people there, they're not getting VI SPDATed, but they want to go into Via de Oro. Do they, at the time when we is a service provider, whoever goes out there, which is nobody, do we have somebody that will? Do they have to go through Office of Supportive Housing, or who do they have to go to?
Who do people have to go?
Right.
Okay. So, there's a lot of folks on here. A term like VI SPDAT probably doesn't mean anything to most folks.
Sorry.
It's okay, Gail. But just for everybody else's awareness, because there's not a dollar, there's not a house or a shelter or money for every single person who lives on the street. The federal government basically says you have to have an approach to sort people, unfortunately, by who's most vulnerable. And so the tool that Gail is describing is one. It's not actually that great of a tool, but it's one of the tools that many communities use to figure out how vulnerable somebody is, and then they try to help people get placed. Gail, that I'll tell you two things. One, having just spent 2 hours at Great Oaks about 4 hours ago myself, I know, because I talk to people that are there, that they are getting outreach from Home First because they knew the people by name that I was with. And two, fortunately, somebody that's there actually got housed in the last couple of days, which is fantastic. So it's important for the public to know. You may hear things at council or whatever else. Just know that the service providers in our community are very committed to trying to help people. I was with two young women today, one of their first job out of college. They spent the whole time explaining how deeply they cared about this work and they wanted to get people off the street. So, Gail, I think the answer to your question is that if this ends up being if the city is the service provider, which I think, or not the city, I'm sorry, if the city funds directly the service provider, then there will be a point at which our outreach teams that are out there say, hey, we are starting, because this is in our local preference area, like to be able to get people it ready to get into the site, whatever that ready ends up being. But we're not there yet, I guess.
Thank you. Just for the FYI, I'm sorry, Omar, but today was the very first day that Home First did go to every single tent. So I'm out there a lot, and I know who's there. Yeah. So today, and people have been housed, and there's only about a few people, the place where I go.
Yeah,
but,
Gail,
so,
understood.
Anyway.
And look, I want to make sure that folks know, and this happens to be, our team tries to also go to encampments and other places so that we can understand what the challenges are for community members who are housed and for community members who are living in, shelters and tents and things, right? Or shelters, tents and structures. So thanks for that, Gail. The next question, now my list has Elvira, John, and Bill. So I'll go to Elvira.
Hi, Omar. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I have two questions. One, I've seen on a presentation before that the breakdown cost of this after the time limit is up was it $6 million to break down the site?
So there was a preliminary. I'm going to turn to Jim. Just know that, just like we had inflation from before, the best we probably can do is give an estimate. But is there a second part of that question before we go to Jim, so he has the whole context?
I'm just thinking. I mean, it sounds good, $1 a year lease for possibly 10 years, but with $6 million just to break it down and also to move it could probably be $10 million. So basically it's like $1 million a year. Wouldn't it be better to get a piece of land that you guys could acquire and just keep, wouldn't it be more money wise,
Yeah. So that, Jim, do you want to take that?
Sure. Yeah. Good question. In the previous report in October, we did have two additional cost items, I think, that you referenced. One is a decommissioning, and that is to essentially return the property to the owner in the condition that we got it. It's removing all the buildings, it's taking out the infrastructure, it's returning it in the condition that we got it. And that was about a $500,000 cost to decommission the site. We literally have to decommission every site like this in the city. This is temporary housing. It's not permanent. The city is not authorized to keep this in these locations ongoing. It's not permanent housing. So every one of them will bear that cost to decommission. In this one, we are looking at the opportunity to relocate the building itself, potentially to another philanthropic site. The mayor, Elizabeth Funk, both mentioned the idea of we're testing something here to see if other owners of property that aren't developing on them, aren't using them, are open to the idea of the city utilizing the property essentially at no cost to the city. But the cost, if we ultimately wanted to relocate all of the buildings off this site at the end of the 10-year period, the cost is estimated in the range of about $6 million. So you are very much in the ballpark in terms of that number.
And then Elvira, before we get to your second question, I will just say, I think there was a part of your question was that wouldn't it make more sense to just find a piece of property that the city owns or a public agency owns? And all I would say to that is it's useful for you and the rest of the members of the public who are here to understand that Jim, I, Greg, Sal, Garrett now, like we spend an awful lot of time looking for public property to do exactly what you're talking about. And so that we have in the Sobrato Foundation, a willing private partner gives us a chance to test that model. So the question of whether it would be cheaper than not having to find a new location, it's a fair one, but it also has to be put not up against that opportunity, but up against one where there is no other opportunity for us to address this crisis that folks want to see progress on. So what was your second question, Elvira, before we go to...
The second question I have is I'm wondering, legally, how can the city offer a buffer zone for Via del Oro when there's not one for Burnell or Rue Ferrari?
So what I'm going to do is I'll make a note of that question. There's no lawyers on this call, or no practicing lawyers anyway, certainly no lawyers that represent the city of San Jose. I will flag your question and ask our lawyers that question. I will just say, as I mentioned when I showed that slide, what city staff was directed to do was to explore no encampment and no return zones, and that's what we're doing, providing that factual data. There is a city attorney who is present at all of our council meetings, and so we'll make sure to ask that question. So thank you very much, Elvira.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to go to, let's see, my next was John Powers.
Hi, Omar.
Hello.
Hey, I'd like to add a little bit to this. We looked at the 1.5 mile outreach radius. So, who's going to be doing that? I guess is the first question. Would you know offhand?
Not yet. I don't have an answer yet. It's one of those things that, so again, you're looking at something that was exploration. Until it's council direction, we're not figuring out like what are the budgetary implications, and is it better to be done by X outreach team or Y? So we don't have that just yet.
Okay, it's fair. And just kind of bring that a little bit further here is that, it says it's going to be a 1.5 mile radius. We don't want to be stuck with that with the CAC. The community probably will not be comfortable with that. So what's going to be that timeline where that outreach will be done? Is it 30 days, 60 days before other areas or other in districts start coming into the District 10 EIH housing?
Yeah, it's a good question. So typically what happens, I'm going to describe to you what has happened in our other sites, which is not to say this is exactly how it will happen with Via del Oro, because there may be project specific differences, or the council may vote a different way, or like there's other stuff. But generally speaking, just so you have a sense, a few months, Greg, I see Greg Pensinger. What do you normally do? Like, is it 90 days before open, or about how long before open do you start that process of just understanding who might be willing to go inside?
Yeah, I think another dependency is the availability of outreach, but generally speaking, we try to get people on the ground as quickly as possible. With, as an example, that this group might be familiar with, the safe parking site or supportive parking site. Life Moves had hired staff in anticipation of the opening, and they were doing the outreach. That was unique because they happen to have staff on the board. With the other ones, we're going to be leveraging our existing outreach teams to go there, but I would say 90 days is a window that we would shoot for, and then to try to make sure we're hitting the streets and making sure people know the site's opening and getting them ready, as you said earlier, for an eventual move-in.
Thanks, Greg. And then John, I think the maybe part two of that is typically the people within the local preference, or at least the way the geographic preference has worked thus far, is typically it stays a geographic preference until the units are completely full, or until some like slightly variable time after opening, right? Like we don't want to be in a position where people don't get the opportunity because they just they were working when somebody came by their tent, for example. So we want to be a little bit careful about that. But also we don't, being like smart about taxpayer dollars and the opportunity to partner with our county, who is potentially looking to include resources. At some point, we need to also try to open it up more broadly so that we're part of the larger system. Yeah, so it's been 30 days at other places, just so you have a sense, but it could vary.
About 60 on the VTA housing or RV park. Kind of to stand back, go back to on the 1.5 mile outreach in here. You're right, because we want to know who's going to be doing this outreach, because people do work, and sometimes these outreach programs, they, lack of another word, they quit at 5 o'clock, and these people aren't even home yet, or they're out not doing outreach on the weekend. So we've encountered that before with the VTA RV safe parking outreach program.
Yeah, now, John.
Yes, I mean, to bring it one more step in here on the the radius in here, you have a 1.5 mile radius. So maybe you could do a step up of maybe another mile radius after the 1.5 radius. Because I know the community doesn't want to be bringing in all of city of San Jose as D10 to be the hub for this EIH housing.
Yeah, John, so here's what I'll say to that. I want to distinguish the outreach conversation from the preference conversation that we're having.
I understand.
Right? And so, like, your point on the outreach is well taken. It's useful for just the public to understand that part of the reason the outreach has the hours they have is because there's only so many dollars for outreach, right? It's not like if we had more resources to say, let's extend those contracts from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m, right? That would be a lot more.
Okay. Yeah.
So I just want to make sure
I understand that, but that's where we found what one of the problems was during the outreach. A lot of people are not even home, or there's no outreach done on the weekend.
Yeah, and John, I think it's a fair
that
point.
Clientele, I would call it.
So, John, I appreciate the questions. I want to make sure to leave time for both Bill and Justin. But what I will say to that is it's a fair point, and maybe one of the ways that the CAC may be able to engage, or frankly, other volunteers in the community, is to kind of work together to say, what might we be able to do unless we expand? Again, you need resources to expand the hours of outreach, right? Like to get to 12 hours, et cetera. But maybe there's a middle ground, or maybe there are some ways, because it feels like in this community there are people who want folks to be able to have access to these, and it sounds like you don't want people to miss their opportunity because it was after normal business hours.
This is what the CAC's for, to work in the best interest of our localized area. But last, I just like to mention, we don't really want to be stuck with a 2-block radius. So can we discuss that later on?
Yeah, John. I'll say,
I'm done. Okay.
Yeah, John, I'll just say to the things about the distances, et cetera, like some of these things, they are just policy calls that will be worked out at City Hall, and the public. I have to say, the Councilmember Batcha, I get his outreach newsletter. I get the mayor's, most offices have them. Yes. Like, there is an effort to open the door for everybody to come down to City Hall and share their view. But ultimately, as city staff, what we're going to try to do is present the council with the understanding of, here are the trade-offs. And there are trade-offs when you say 2 blocks versus 2 miles, right? Like there are impacts to those differences. And we have a huge issue with the water board making extreme demands on the taxpayer dollars as it relates to keeping the waterways clear, that are going to impact all of us. And so I just really want folks to understand, like, your space for that part of it is probably a combination of your CAC, your council office directly, and then also coming to City Hall. But John, I want to. Yeah, absolutely. I want to move to Bill, who's been sitting patiently, and then Justin. I saw your hand. I just want to acknowledge it, but go ahead, Bill. Oh, Bill, you're muted.
My first question dovetails right into what John was saying. Did I hear right that if you're kicking somebody out, you're going to require them to move at least 2 blocks? That's all?
If there is, so the March budget message includes, and we'll post the slides, I'm paraphrasing now, but includes a call for, in general, across all of the current and planned interim housing, safe parking, safe sleeping, a 2-block no return zone. That's a 2 walkable block, no return zone, so that there is not a issue immediately around the site. That is what that language is.
Well, let me say that's ridiculously inadequate. And what you're doing is you're moving somebody from who knows what distance, say a mile, and then dumping them off 2 blocks from the site.
Wait, I'm sorry, Bill. There may be sorry, Bill, to interrupt you. There may be a slight misunderstanding. The city is not planning to pick people up from further away and then drop them 2 blocks from the site. That's not in the operational plan.
Well, I'm delighted for them to get people wherever they get them, but if they're put out of the project, and I assume it would be only if there's a problem, only if they're a problem. Putting them out for 2 blocks, that's terrible. Would you want those people to be dumped into within 2 blocks of your home?
Okay, so the no return zone is about an area that has been abated, not what happens to the people who are inside the site. We actually have at the other sites very, very little issue in terms of exits, but in any case, that's not what the no return zone is about. That's you're talking about one issue, but the thing that you're talking about is really about what happens after an abatement. So after an area is cleared of encampments, so it's a little bit different, but that's the answer, and that's a policy conversation that I think, again, raising with Councilmember Batra, coming to City Council, I think those are the places for sharing that piece, and I will certainly carry your feedback, Bill. What's your second question? I see Justin and Danya as well.
Is there a list? Can we get a list and deliver it to the CAC, to Isaac, of the other projects, the other sites, with a map that shows where they are and how many people and that sort of thing, so we can know where we stand and whether we're bearing an unfair burden, an unfair proportion of the burden.
So, Bill, yes, is the short version. I will tell you that we will not produce a site that is just interim housing. It presents an inadequate and inaccurate picture of the temporary housing in San Jose. There's 2,000 units of interim house or of temporary housing in the city, and it's very important that people not disconnect the newest versions from all of the other supply. So we will share probably in a table format and then also in a map where these where the current ones are, where the proposed are. We've actually displayed this at council before, so it won't be too hard to get. I will just make a note. I know Garrett from my team is here, so I'll just flag that point so that we can dig into that and get it to the CAC.
Now, any other questions? Last one is real quick. The lady that talked earlier from the contractor, I take it that contract has been signed?
We're going to council on April 16th. So it is pending. It will be pending City Council deciding to have it executed.
In other words, you won't sign the contract unless you're going ahead with the project. The contract
right.
with the.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Go ahead, Jim.
Makes sense.
Yeah. We're going to City Council on April 16th to get the authority to execute the agreement with Dignity Moves to develop the project in a manner that we've described tonight and in past meetings.
Well, it makes sense to only do it after you've.
That's right.
The lease.
That's how the city typically does business. So, Bill, that makes complete sense, and that's how we are approaching it.
Thanks,
All
Bill.
Right, I'm done.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Justin and then Danya. Go ahead, Justin.
Hi, Omar, Mayor, and everyone else. Thanks for this presentation. Appreciate all the updates. Not to take away from the present, a few years away from now, we'll be in the process of decommissioning. Just want to understand, as you brought up a point about trying to see how this will work and attract other philanthropic folks with unused lands. What are some selling points? I'm just curious how, if there's a committee, will they try to gain support from other people? And are there any benefits for potential donors in the future that you would share with them to entice them to agree to this? Just curious if there's an answer to that.
Yeah, so at the moment, I would say that every philanthropic entity sort of makes that decision of their own doing. We have seen some people are moved by their faith, and so they just want to lean in and help do something important, either for that calling. Some people are longtime San Jose leaders in the community, and so they just want to. They're not using their property, and they want to sort of do it that way. The city generally, from a we're operating on y'all's tax dollars, and so frankly, we try to be really careful in the decisions that we make. So I would say, at the moment, I don't have any additional sort of enticements that we have in mind to offer developers. We didn't actually offer John Sobrato anything, and he just cares about this community. I'm not going to speak too much for him, but I've talked to him a couple of times, and I get the impression that he wants to do right by San Jose. So we'll be looking probably first for people like that who are saying, I want to be part of the solution. So thanks for that question. And then I see
Omar, let me add one quick point.
Go ahead.
Too.
Go ahead, Jim.
Many of the philanthropists, landowners, that type of thing, certainly, Omar, that you talk to, the mayor talks to, Elizabeth and Joe from Dignity Moves talk to as well, they want to try and impact this problem at scale. And they have all asked, what might it take to solve the problem at scale? We probably need more landowners. We probably need more philanthropists donating cash and money as well to partner with the city. So I think that is part of it, is can this be another tool, another approach, along with other proven approaches to impact this issue at scale? I think the mayor mentioned that at the start of the meeting too. So that is, an enticement or a reason or a strategy why others might want to get involved as well.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate that. And Danya.
Hi, Omar. Hi, Mayor, and everybody else in the meeting. I am a D2 resident, but D2 and D10 are basically South San Jose. So we are impacted by Via del Oro and the encampments around. My question is this. At D2, we have existing EIHs. We have hundreds of beds. So if the way that is functioning is any kind of reference of how Via del Oro, if approved, will turn into, I have a lot of questions, because I recently went into one of those CAC meetings for Bernal and Rue Ferrari. I was told that they just take people from the county list. So even though we have encampments nearby, the people living in the encampments in the region do not have access or preference. And this preference stops at what, 30 days?
I can't tell if is that the question? Does the preference stop at 30 days?
Yes. Yeah. Because that's the way the current EIHs are functioning. I don't even know if the EIH that's in D2 even had a local preference. So even if you are telling that Via del Oro will have a local preference in the beginning, it will stop at some point of time, right? And if we are not able to enforce no return for the encampments that were served outreach, we will still have the same problem. So how are you going to do it differently?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that I'll say there. Maybe so. The first is I described the local preference, the geographic preference, exactly as you just did. So that tracks. That is the way it has worked. Is up until it's full or sometime after opening, often 30 days. There is a geographic preference. That geographic preference does not carry on indefinitely for the reasons I mentioned earlier. Partially, we're trying to be responsible with taxpayer dollars, and also being part of the sort of larger system allows us to leverage the dollars, the taxpayer dollars of our partners at the county. It allows us to have a more sort of coordinated effort to help people. So that's true. I think the question you asked about, well, so what would be different than what's happening in District 2? I think on the management front, not of the actual on-site. I literally have been on all of our interim housing. I've never spoken to anybody, with maybe one exception, had any issue with what happens on-site. I think that, Danya, what is at least proposed by the mayor and council member Batra on October 17th, and what was in the mayor's March budget message, is a different approach to what happens around the interim housing site, which in this case would include some area where people were not allowed to, once abated, not allowed to come back to, and also just actually the inclination to abate in an area after a certain period of time, once the site has been opened and people have been offered. So I guess I would say those are different policy proposals that are outstanding from the mayor and the council member that will go before council. So, and in the context of the mayor's, that was actually in the March budget message. And so now the question just becomes, what actually is, like, when this city manager's budget proposal comes out, what does it look like, right? And the council will have to weigh in. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer, but your question had a lot to it. And Danya, I'll see if you have any others. Isaac, I want to acknowledge I do see your hand, but I think Danya might have other questions. So go ahead, Danya.
Yeah, primarily this, because for example, as a case study, Great Oaks Encampment, I don't know if it is being even considered for Branham. I've been having a hard time getting into the CAC. Many of us have trouble getting into the CAC. We have been not allowed to. And also I reached to housing department multiple times. So we don't have an answer of the geographical preference for Branham, which is also coming up very soon. So since you are here, I just want to see if you have a quick answer for that.
I don't, but as has been the case with other questions that you've sent me via email, I will pledge to you, just as I had with them, that I will right now. Within a week, I will send you a note that either says, here's the answer, or I don't have it yet, and I will make sure to get back to you within a week after that.
Yeah, the Branham thing I have asked you also. I do not have an answer yet.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I'll have to go back and check my email. I would imagine typically when I get emails from you, I do respond. So I'll take that one offline so that I'm not holding up the entire meeting. But,
yeah, thank you.
Okay, Isaac and then Jackie.
Yeah, just a quick question, Omar. I'm just surprised you're not aware of the CAC for Via Doloro. Do you actually are you in contact with Greg and Kelly, and do they actually share this information, or I just don't know how it works?
Yeah, yeah, Isaac. So it's what I would say. I think that, so yes, I am in touch with our housing department, but what I would say is that, as I said when you mentioned it earlier, what you described is kind of a unique situation. Typically, and I mentioned that we tend to work closely with the council offices for the district where the site is, right? So usually our staff are in the same meetings with the council office representatives and the members of the public, et cetera, and we end up with some sort of shared understanding of these are the people that are going to be on the CAC. And in all of the other CACs, those are new people, right? And so part of what we need to do as a city staff is make sure, as I mentioned earlier, that we have an additional conversation with Councilmember Batra and team, and just ensure that what you described as being like, this is a done deal, this is what's happening in this community, that comports with what everybody's understanding is. I'm not disputing what you're saying, and it's not that I don't know about it. It's just that I need to have that conversation with the people that are. And Isaac, I can't go back and forth with you on this because there are two other people that are waiting to talk.
Just the question is, are you involved? Do you actually do you get a report of what happens, or that's the question. Are you?
Yeah, no, like I said, the question you asked a minute ago was, do I know about it? And the answer is yes. Like, I do have conversations with Greg, with Kelly, with the housing department. In terms of the specific timing, like of when it actually gets stood up, I may not get that exact detail depending on what else is going on. The housing department director is really where the root there is. But the bottom line is, I'm aware of it. We need to talk to the council member offline and make sure that everybody's sort of all in lockstep and move forward from there. Because we're almost out of time, Isaac, I am going to move on to Jackie, who's been waiting patiently. And then if her question gets answered, we'll go to Bill. So Jackie?
I don't really have a question, but I have an answer. Our CAC meetings for VTA parking and for Via del Oro happen every month. And if people will email Emma Escorcia in D10, she will add them to the list. Nobody is prevented from attending those meetings. It is an open meeting. So please contact the D10 office and ask for Emma Escorcia. I can give the email, and she will add you to the list so you will be notified when the next meeting is. We want to make sure the community all attends these meetings.
Thanks for that, Jackie. Appreciate it, and we'll make sure to make sure to just include that link for folks when we put the next piece of information up on that same site I mentioned. And finally, at 6:58, we'll close it out with Bill.
I hate to be being negative towards you, but did I just hear that you've had a lot of meetings that the CAC was not invited to or informed of at all?
No, you did not. Well, I don't know what you heard, but and I don't actually know what you're.
No, it's from your mouth.
No, well, this will be recorded. We'll put it online, so that's no problem. But I'm not sure what the confusion is. But the city has lots of city council meetings. I brief the council members and the mayor. We have internal departmental meetings. I mean, there are lots of meetings that the CAC wouldn't attend just by nature of city staff sort of doing its daily work. So I'm not sure I understand the root of your question. And don't worry, I don't have any problem in terms of. Please, if you want to try to rephrase, or I'm certainly open. I don't know.
Well, I'm just wondering what has been decided that we should have had some input into, and I can't tell you right off the top of my head, and I don't expect you to be able to either.
Yeah, okay. So I guess what I would say to that is the CAC exists. It's an advisory body to provide advice to the council office, to city staff about issues that come up, about their perspective of a site that's coming. It's not the council. It doesn't supplant the council's role. So I would say, as I understand it, and I'll circle back if you want, Bill, but my understanding is that just like with our other sites, when a CAC exists, our housing department team has folks that interact and engage as long as they're in those meetings. I think it's very important that we have that opportunity, even as they get transitioned to be maybe more community run. So there isn't. I mean, you heard the project status update here. This is almost all the information. I mean, there's more detail about how many dollars and cents or that sort of thing. But we don't have a service provider yet. So all of the other questions about what's going to happen on site are just not decided yet.
Gets formally stood up to once the council has approved the project and the site. So that has been our typical past practice as well, taking nothing away from the work that body is currently doing on previous projects. Once there's been an approval, there is that consultation and kind of a more of a formal setup as well.
Okay, yeah. So I think we seem to be spending. Omar, can I take a couple of minutes? So you want to conclude something, and then
a
couple of minutes, please.
Yeah. So council member, I'll just finish, and Bill, by all means, feel free to reach out. We put an email address on the site to anybody else that has questions. The city, our departments do the operational work of standing up these types of programs. So that's where some of those pieces will be. But yeah, council member, if you want to take 1 to 2 minutes, it's already over time. So I do want to be mindful of that, but go ahead.
Yeah. I hope the community allows me to speak for 2 minutes, because there's a lot has been presented, a lot of very valuable information. Okay, so comment number 1, Isaac, you are 100% correct that there is an official CAC which was formed and is operational. I will talk to Omar and figure out where the confusion is coming from. as far as you're concerned and the members you described, yes, they're the CAC member and it is an operational CAC. We'll make sure that whatever the confusion is, I'll take care of that one. Okay. Number two, the community was given a lot of information about how the EIH or the site will be from the inside. I know you're all happy to know that the inside of the site is going to be extremely comfortable, useful, ready to serve the people we put in there. The concern is what really happens outside, because your interaction is not with the inside most of the days, most of the hours. Your interaction is what happens outside. You rarely ever go inside. I've gone there, other people have gone who have a work to do, but your interaction is how you see the site outside. And in this site, we have told you and promised you that we want to give the benefit to the homeless people who get put in there and to the community to see that their encampments are gone. Whatever the wrong things come with the encampments, by sharing the encampments into the community, we want to make sure that once you have accepted to create an EIH and provided a proper accommodation to these people, the local encampment people get moved in there, and hence no more that encampments come in that area. That's why no return, no encampment is what we need to do to give the community a reason to accept the EIHs. Otherwise, if you don't get anything cleaner, there's no reason for you to be not protesting, which is what you've done in the past. And I want to make sure that we move mile at a time, half a mile at a time. We clean up the San Jose, we provide the proper accommodation to these people. And as a result, we free up the encampments, we free up the land from the encampment. So let's work together to make sure that we build the right EIH, the right number of them, and accommodate all the people we need to accommodate there. And hence, none of us has to deal with the encampments. It's neither good for the people who live there, nor good for the people who are around those. So that's the goal. That's what we're going to work on. I'll work my part of the job, which is at the council level. I need all of you to be staying on the same bandwidth, that what you are looking for is what I'm representing. So please continue to reinforce your needs and the desires so that I can represent you properly at the council level. But right now, this is what this project is all about, and we need to make it successful. This is the solution. At least this is the best solution we know at the moment to be able to solve. If something better appears, we will be willing to go for that. But right now, this is the best solution we have, all of the people who have thought about. In terms of the cost, we're going to continue. City staff has been directed as a part of the budget memo to look at all the various ways we can reduce the cost and build these things quicker, because both of those are needed in order to scale. And you know that the pre-manufactured stuff is being looked at as a part of the budget. There's going to be a complete analysis going to be coming out of all the various options that exist for building these cheaper and quicker and higher quality. Okay. Thank you very much for the time. Thank you very much for Omar for presenting the details, Jim, and all the people who worked on these presentations. And thank you for answering all the questions from the D10, D2 residents, whoever are concerned about all of those. Okay.
Thank you, council member, and to the members of the public. Again, the next big step will be the April 16th City Council meeting, where it's open to the public. The memo associated will be posted 10 days before then. So we wanted to make sure, as has been our practice, to be just transparent and forthright with you about what the status is and provide you with the information. Our goal is to help people, our entire San Jose community, help people who are on the street get off the street, help people who are in homes, live a life of peace in their community as well. We have one San Jose, and we're trying to make sure it's available to everybody. So I want everybody to have a nice evening, and thanks for taking the time. I know we're a little bit over, and this will post in the next couple of days. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.